Jack Foster maintained a neutral expression as three Vexari diplomats circled him, their elongated limbs gesturing dismissively at his physical form. The central atrium of Nexus Station hummed with activity, various species from across the Interstellar Coalition conducting their business while pretending not to stare at the human newcomer. "Such fragile bone structure," commented the tallest Vexari, Admiral Kulvex, his translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns of amusement, "and the musculature is remarkably inefficient. How does your species manage interplanetary travel with such obvious biological limitations?" Jack had been warned about this reception. As the first human representative selected for the prestigious Coalition security program, the diplomatic course had prepared him for skepticism, but not this level of condescension. "We compensate in other ways, Admiral," Jack replied evenly, resisting the urge to point out that humans had mastered spaceflight with far fewer resources than most Coalition species. The Vexari weren't interested in Earth's accomplishments. They'd already dismissed humanity as a curiosity rather than a potential ally. Commander Dextorian, the station's Dorsey security chief, approached with deliberate heaviness in his four-legged gait. His exoskeleton clicked as he extended a manipulation appendage toward Jack, not in greeting, but offering a small electronic device. "Your duties begin immediately, Human Foster. The maintenance drones in Sector 7 require supervision." The commander's compound eyes shifted in what Jack recognized as the Dorsey equivalent of a smirk. "Your species hasn't even mastered basic gravitational manipulation technology. You'll be more useful maintaining our facilities than attempting security protocols beyond your comprehension." The Vexari entourage chittered with barely contained laughter. Jack accepted the drone controller with a respectful nod, swallowing his frustration. Earth's admission to the Coalition had been conditional: prove human worth or lose the protection their membership offered against the expanding Terrax Dominion. "I appreciate the opportunity to contribute, Commander," Jack responded, choosing diplomacy over pride. "Though I was under the impression my combat expertise would be evaluated during this rotation." Commander Dextorian's mandibles clicked in obvious amusement. "Combat expertise? Your species still relies on projectile weapons and hasn't evolved beyond your planet's gravity well. Perhaps after you demonstrate basic competence with station operations, we might find use for your primitive capabilities." As the aliens moved away, discussing Jack as though he weren't present, he caught fragments of their conversation. Provisional species status, evolutionary dead end, and charitable inclusion project. The universal translators didn't soften their dismissive tone. Jack made his way through the sweeping corridors of Nexus Station toward his assigned quarters. The habitat had been designed for dozens of species, but clearly hadn't anticipated human occupancy. The doorway to his compartment required him to duck. The atmosphere held traces of methane that made his eyes water, and the artificial gravity fluctuated uncomfortably every few steps. Inside his quarters, the situation wasn't much better. The sleeping platform was designed for invertebrate physiology. Temperature controls operated in Kelvin, ranges unsafe for humans, and the nutrition dispenser offered nothing compatible with human digestion. These weren't oversights. They were deliberate reminders of his perceived inferiority. Jack activated his personal communication device, recording a message for Earth's Coalition Liaison Office. Day 1 at Nexus Station. Reception as expected. Assigned to maintenance rather than security training. Will comply while seeking opportunities to demonstrate actual capabilities. Quarters are, he paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing, not configured for human habitation. Requesting standard adaptation package if possible. He ended the transmission, knowing help wouldn't arrive for weeks. The Coalition had positioned Nexus Station at the edge of contested space, far from Earth, but perilously close to Terrax territory. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. Jack opened it to find Telex, a four-armed tactical officer with metallic skin that rippled like quicksilver. Unlike the others, Telex's posture conveyed curiosity rather than contempt. "Human Jack," Telex began, voice resonating with harmonic undertones. "I've brought environmental adjustments for your quarters." The tactical officer handed Jack several devices. "Many species fear what our intelligence reports clearly missed. Humans possess remarkable adaptability unlike anything in known space. This concerns them." Jack accepted the equipment with genuine surprise. "Thank you, Officer Telix. May I ask why you're helping me?" Telix's surface rippled with complicated patterns. "The Tauraks grow stronger each cycle. The Coalition needs every advantage, even ones they're too proud to recognize yet." The metallic being tilted forward slightly. "And I've studied your Earth's history. Your people have demonstrated something my species values: persistence against overwhelming odds." After Telix departed, Jack calibrated the environmental units, finally achieving breathable air and tolerable gravity. As he settled onto his improvised sleeping arrangement, he considered Telix's words with cautious optimism. At least one being on this station saw humans as more than an evolutionary curiosity. Tomorrow, he would begin proving the rest of them wrong. "Remain still, human Foster," Dr. Neary instructed, her avian features betraying fascination despite professional detachment. The medical bay of Nexus Station hummed with activity as various scanning devices orbited Jack's body. 3 weeks into his assignment, the Coalition had finally ordered a complete physiological assessment, standard procedure for all security personnel, though Jack suspected they delayed his examination, hoping he'd withdraw from the program. The holographic displays surrounding the examination platform flickered with streams of biological data, prompting confused chirps from Dr. Neary's assistant physicians. The chief medical officer's feathered crest rose in what Jack had learned indicated surprise. "Your results require verification," she announced, mandibles clicking rapidly. "Several readings appear contradictory to established semiobiology parameters." Jack maintained his position on the examination platform. "What seems to be the problem, Doctor?" Dr. Neary tilted her avian head, compound eyes reflecting the blue light of the medical displays. "Your muscle recovery rate exceeds Jurgen Heavy Worlders by 17%. Your cardiovascular efficiency matches Altarian oxygen processors despite lacking secondary respiratory organs. And your neurological stress response," she trilled softly, "it suggests adaptation capability outside our classification system." Jack shrugged, a gesture that confused most non-humans. "I was merely an above-average marathon runner on Earth. Nothing exceptional by human standards." The medical team exchanged glances laden with professional concern. One of the junior physicians, a gelatinous Moregi, pulsed anxiously. "Perhaps the equipment requires recalibration. The human's homeworld gravity is only 1.0 grams. These readings suggest capabilities evolved for at least 1.8 grams environments." "Equipment is functioning within parameters," Dr. Neary responded firmly. "Continue the examination. I want detailed analysis of cellular regeneration, metabolic efficiency, and neural plasticity." Jack suppressed a smile. Humanity's greatest advantage had always been that others underestimated them. The Coalition species evolved for specific environmental niches and later enhanced through genetic specialization couldn't comprehend humans' general adaptability. Their scientific models simply hadn't accounted for it. The examination continued for another hour before an emergency alert interrupted the proceedings. Red warning lights bathed the medical bay as the station's AI announced. "Critical failure in gravitational stabilizers, sectors 12 through 17. All personnel implement high-gravity protocols. Medical response teams to affected areas." Dr. Neary's feathers flattened against her body, a sign of distress. "Our examination will conclude later, human Foster. Please return to your assigned." The floor suddenly lurched beneath them as artificial gravity surged to 3 times normal intensity. Medical equipment crashed to the floor as the avian physicians stumbled, their hollow-boned physiology extremely vulnerable to sudden gravitational changes. Jack's human body, evolved on a planet with variable terrain, and constantly shifting environmental pressures, adjusted more readily. He felt the crushing weight but remained functional, while the medical staff collapsed around him, pinned by their own body mass. Emergency stabilizer activation required, gasped Dr. Neary, unable to reach the control panel now 10 excruciating steps away. Manual override. Necessary. Without hesitation, Jack forced himself across the medical bay, each step requiring tremendous effort against the tripled gravity. His Earth-evolved musculature, dismissed as inefficient by coalition standards, redistributed stress load across multiple muscle groups automatically. He reached the environmental controls and activated the localized gravity stabilizers. As normal gravity restored, Dr. Neary struggled to her feet, assisted by her recovering staff. "You remained mobile in triple gravity," she observed, professional detachment momentarily abandoned, without supplemental support systems. Jack helped the Moregi physician, whose gelatinous form had partially collapsed under the gravitational stress. Humans evolved on a planet with variable terrain and significant gravitational differences depending on latitude and altitude. We're used to adjusting. The emergency alert continued blaring. Dr. Neary's communicator activated with urgent requests for medical assistance, multiple injuries in affected sectors. All available medical personnel respond. "I'll help," Jack offered immediately. "I have emergency medical training." Dr. Neary hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Accompany Team 3 to Sector 14. Your adaptability may prove useful." Jack followed the medical team through corridors where the gravity fluctuations had caused chaos. They found a group of Dravidi diplomats trapped beneath collapsed ceiling panels, their crystalline bodies cracked from the sudden pressure. The medical team hesitated, their specialized equipment calibrated for soft tissue injuries rather than crystalline physiologies. "We need structural supports before attempting extraction," the team leader announced. "Requesting engineering assistance. Estimated arrival 20 minutes." Jack assessed the situation differently. They don't have 20 minutes. Those cracks are approaching their central consciousness clusters. He moved toward the maintenance access panel nearby, quickly reconfiguring portable gravitational stabilizers from the medical kits. "What are you doing?" demanded the team leader. "Creating a localized low-gravity field," Jack explained, working rapidly. "We'll reduce pressure on their structures while extracting them." "That's not standard protocol," objected another medic. "Human emergency response often isn't," Jack replied, activating his improvised device. The collapsed panels lightened enough for careful removal, allowing the team to extract the injured diplomats before their crystal mattresses shattered completely. From the entrance to the chamber, Station Captain Shardmind observed the rescue, his own crystalline form reflecting the emergency lighting. The captain had been among the most vocal opponents of human inclusion in the coalition. "Perhaps," Shardman noted quietly to his executive officer, "we misclassified their capabilities." Later that evening, Jack discovered a notification on his quarters terminal. Had been reassigned from maintenance duty to emergency response training, effective immediately. He also noticed something else. The environmental settings in his quarters had been adjusted to Earth normal parameters without his request. As he prepared for sleep, Jack spotted the small surveillance device newly installed in the corner of his room. The Coalition Security Council had developed a sudden interest in human physiology and adaptation rates. He smiled slightly, careful not to look directly at the camera. The evaluation had begun in earnest. The briefing chamber fell silent as Commander Vexhorn slammed his massive scaled fist against the polished obsidian table. Fracture lines spiderwebbed across the surface, a deliberate show of strength that made several junior officers flinch. The Drekari commander's yellow eyes narrowed as he surveyed the assembled security personnel. The Torax incursion into Sector 87 marks their fifth territorial violation this cycle. Vexhorn growled, voice resonating with subharmonic tones that made Jack's teeth vibrate. Intelligence suggests they're testing our response capabilities before a coordinated offensive. Holographic displays materialize above the table, showing Terrax movement patterns across contested space. Jack studied the tactical readouts with practiced intensity, noting patterns his coalition colleagues seemed to overlook. The Terrax ships moved with almost biological synchronicity, suggesting hive mind coordination rather than individual command structures. "We need warriors, not diplomatic accessories," Vexorn continued, his gaze settling on Jack with unmistakable contempt. "Our defense protocols require combat-ready personnel capable of withstanding extreme battlefield conditions." The commander's aide, a slender Vexari, activated a secondary display showing a training facility built into an unstable moon orbiting the gas giant Kelbraxis. The Gauntlet training program begins tomorrow. All security divisions will provide candidates for assessment and specialized combat preparation. Murmurs rippled through the assembled officers. The Gauntlet had a notorious reputation, a brutally effective training regimen that regularly claimed lives even among evolved combat species. Its completion rate hovered below 30%, with washouts reassigned to support roles if they survived. "The human will participate with tomorrow's elite squadrons," Vexorn announced, mandibles clicking in what Jack recognized as anticipation of failure. The room fell silent. Every alien eye turned toward Jack, expressions ranging from pity to amusement. They expected him to withdraw honorably or request exemption based on his provisional species status. The setup was obvious. Engineer his failure to justify human exclusion from meaningful coalition roles. Jack rose from his seat, posture relaxed but confident. "I accept the assignment, Commander. Thank you for the opportunity." Vexorn's scales darkened, a sign of surprise or frustration. "Report to Hangar Deck 7 at 400 station time. Specialized environmental gear will not be provided." The dismissal was clear as the commander terminated the briefing session. As officers filed out, Tactical Officer Telix fell into step beside Jack. "The commander has authorized minimal preparation time deliberately, the metallic being observed quietly. Most species require at least 3 cycles to acclimatize to gauntlet conditions." "I suspected as much," Jack replied, keeping his voice neutral as they passed a group of Drekari security officers. "Apparently, my reassignment from maintenance duty wasn't entirely based on merit." Telix's surface rippled with complex patterns, the equivalent of a concerned frown. "The gauntlet tests more than combat proficiency. Environmental extremes, psychological warfare elements, isolation scenarios designed to break morale. Many participants don't return." "Sounds like Special Forces training back on Earth," Jack noted with a wry smile. "Minus the actual fatalities, usually." They entered a quiet corridor where surveillance was minimal. Telix's voice dropped to a harmonic whisper. "I've accessed something you should see. Follow me." The tactical officer led Jack to a rarely used data analysis chamber. Once inside, Telix activated personal privacy shields before retrieving a data crystal from a concealed compartment in his metallic form. "This contains contraband training simulations," Telix explained, inserting the crystal into a secure reader. "And something else, intercepted Terrax communications our leadership has suppressed." The holographic display initialized, showing Terrax fleet movements along with fragmented communication intercepts. Jack's eyes widened as the translation matrix processed the alien language. "They specifically avoid human-inhabited sectors," he observed, highlighting movement patterns that clearly detoured around Earth's colonial territories, despite tactical disadvantages in doing so. Why would an advanced hostile force fear contact with humanity? We're technologically inferior by coalition standards. Unknown, Telix admitted, metallic features reconfiguring into a troubled expression. But intercepted communications show they classify humans as unpredictable variables and incompatible with standard conquest protocols. They fear something about your species that our own intelligence hasn't identified. Jack absorbed this information thoughtfully. Does Commander Vexorn know about this? The High Command knows. Telex confirmed, which is precisely why they're testing you in the gauntlet. They suspect humans possess capabilities our scanning technology can't detect. The tactical officer's surface rippled anxiously. Be cautious, Jack. You're not being evaluated just as a potential asset, but as a potential threat. Understood, Jack replied, his mind already analyzing strategic implications. Can you access historical data on previous gauntlet sessions? Telex hesitated before nodding. Limited records. The course reconfigures between each cohort, but certain elements remain consistent. That's enough to identify patterns, Jack said, settling into the analysis station. Let's see what we're dealing with. Throughout the night cycle, Jack studied previous gauntlet scenarios, noting the psychological patterns underlying seemingly random challenges. The Coalition relied heavily on technological advantages and specialized evolutionary traits, approaches that could become liabilities under the right circumstances. When Jack finally returned to his quarters, the station chronometer showed less than 2 hours before deployment. Rather than attempting sleep, he began a series of stretching exercises and breathing techniques, ancient human practices predating space travel by millennia. As he centered himself, Jack reflected on Earth's history, countless civilizations rising and falling, humans constantly adapting to changing circumstances, surviving disasters that should have ended them. The Coalition species had evolved for specific environmental niches and later enhanced themselves through technology and genetic specialization. Humans had done something different. They had remained adaptable generalists, ready to face the unknown. Tomorrow, he would show them exactly what that meant. The transport shuttle shuddered as it entered Kelbrax's turbulent atmosphere. Through the viewport, Jack watched lightning storms rage across the gas giant's swirling surface while their destination, a desolate moon scarred with artificial structures, grew steadily larger. Around him, 22 elite candidates from various Coalition species performed last-minute equipment checks and physiological preparations. Atmospheric composition at landing zone, nitrogen-methane mix, temperature -70 standard units, radiation levels exceeding safety parameters for most carbon-based life forms, announced the shuttle's AI. Survival suits required for all non-specialized personnel. Several candidates glanced at Jack with poorly concealed satisfaction. Commander Vexorn had indeed fulfilled his promise. No specialized environmental gear had been provided for the human. Jack wore only the standard Coalition uniform, reinforced with basic thermal lining that would prove woefully inadequate against the moon's hostile conditions. Zifrak, a hulking Drakari officer with ceremonial battle scars etched into his scales, leaned toward Jack. The initial exposure test eliminates 20% of candidates, he rumbled, voice pitched deliberately for others to hear. Your fragile physiology won't survive the first environmental transition. Honorable withdrawal remains an option. Jack met the Drakari's yellow gaze steadily. Appreciate the concern, but I'll manage. The shuttle touched down with a bone-jarring impact. External sensors showed howling methane storms beyond the airlock. The Gauntlet's senior instructor, a cybernetically enhanced Vexari veteran, activated the briefing hologram. Welcome to Selection Phase 1, the instructor announced, voice artificially modulated to penetrate even the heaviest environmental helmets. Your first challenge begins the moment that door opens. Reach Processing Station Alpha, 10 kilometers north, before the atmospheric processors initiate the thermal cycle. Those who fail to arrive, the instructor's artificial eyes gleamed, will experience firsthand why we call this the Gauntlet. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of escaping atmosphere. Instantly, the cabin temperature plummeted as methane-laden winds howled through the opening. The alien candidates activated various biological adaptations and technological enhancements, dermal shields energizing, specialized respiration systems engaging, thermal regulators humming to life. Jack stepped forward, immediately feeling the brutal assault of cold against his exposed skin. He regulated his breathing carefully, not fighting the cold but working with it, allowing his body's natural responses to activate gradually. Human thermoregulation, considered primitive by coalition standards, functioned on principles many advanced species had engineered out of their genetic code generations ago. The candidates plunged into the storm. Visibility dropped to mere meters as methane crystals swirled through the air. Jack noted several specialized species already struggling. Their environmental adaptations, perfectly calibrated for specific conditions, faltered against the chaotic atmospheric patterns. He maintained a steady pace, conserving energy while observing the others. The Jurgen heavy-worlders pushed ahead with brute strength, specialized musculature, allowing them to power through the storm. Free photosynthetic chlorines immediately fell behind, their light-dependent systems failing in the darkness. An hour into the trek, the environment shifted dramatically. Atmospheric processors roared to life across the training ground, superheating sections of terrain while flash-freezing others. The temperature fluctuations occurred with deliberate randomness, designed to render specific adaptations useless. Jack watched as specialized species struggled to recalibrate. The Drakkari's temperature-regulating scales locked up, unable to adjust quickly enough between extremes. The cybernetically enhanced candidates fared better initially until their systems began reporting conflicts between biological and technological components. Monitoring stations captured everything, transmitting data to observers safely ensconced in orbital facilities. In the primary observation deck, Commander Vexorn frowned at the readouts. The human's core temperature should have reached critical failure 12 minutes ago. He noted, mandibles clicking in confusion. Yet his vital signs show only moderate stress. Dr. Neary, monitoring the medical telemetry, tilted her avian head thoughtfully. Humans possess remarkable homeostatic systems, crude but effective. They evolved on a planet with dramatic temperature variations between regions and seasons. She highlighted Jack's biometric data. His body is adapting in real time without technological assistance. By the fourth hour, half the candidates had been extracted by medical teams. The remaining participants reached a vast basin where the next challenge awaited. An immense artificial lake of ammonia-based liquid, its surface churning violently. Underwater navigation course, muttered a Vexary candidate, activating specialized gill structures, designed for aquatic specialists. Jack assessed the challenge methodically. Though humans lacked specialized aquatic adaptations, they possessed one critical advantage: conscious breath control. While coalition species relied on automatic respiratory systems, humans could voluntarily regulate oxygen consumption. As candidates entered the toxic liquid, specialized respiratory adaptations immediately engaged, complicated biochemical processes that couldn't be easily adjusted mid-operation. Jack submerged with measured breaths, focusing on minimizing exertion and maximizing efficiency, techniques developed by Earth's freedivers centuries before space travel. In the observation center, General Krex, the Gauntlet's administrator, reviewed Jack's performance with growing concern. Impossible, he muttered, mandibles clicking rapidly. The human matches specialized aquatic species in submersion duration despite lacking gill structures or oxygen storage organs. When atmospheric toxins were introduced in the final phase, specialized filtration organs among the alien candidates struggled with the unfamiliar compounds. Jack's primitive human liver, an organ coalition xenobiologists had dismissed as inefficient, demonstrated detoxification capabilities that astonished observers. The generalized human organ processed the unknown compounds through pathways evolved to handle Earth's countless natural toxins. As candidates finally staggered into Processing Station Alpha, Jack arrived third, behind specialized environment masters, but ahead of combat-evolved species. Medical officers rushed to assess the survivors, particularly interested in the human's condition. "Your performance defies our biological models," admitted the chief medical officer, examining Jack's readings with professional fascination. You possess no specialized adaptations, yet outperformed evolutionary specialists. Jack accepted a hydration pack, heartbeat already normalizing. Humans don't specialize, he explained between measured breaths. We adapt. In the Orbital Observation Center, Commander Vexwarn's expression darkened as he reviewed the compiled data. Reclassify the human candidate, he ordered quietly. Priority Observation Protocol. Combat trials begin tomorrow. Jack's status had officially changed from curiosity to legitimate contender and potential threat. Dawn broke over the Gauntlet's combat arena, a vast hexagonal chamber with walls that shifted and reconfigured to create unpredictable terrain. Overhead observation platforms hummed with activity as senior coalition officers gathered to witness the combat trials. Jack noted the increased attendance with grim amusement. His unexpected survival of the environmental challenges had apparently generated interest among the command structure. The remaining 12 candidates assembled at the chamber center. Their numbers had dwindled dramatically after yesterday's trials, with specialized species washing out when environmental variables exceeded their adaptation ranges. Those who remained represented the coalition's premier combat-evolved species. The Drakari with their natural armor and regenerative capabilities, the Vexari with their enhanced reflexes and venom glands, and the imposing Jurgen heavy worlders with muscle density 5 times human standard. Master Instructor Klvex activated the Neural Combat Simulator, a shimmering field that enveloped the arena. Combat assessment phase commences now, the instructor announced. Neural simulators will pair contestants against appropriate challenges based on their demonstrated capabilities. The Drakari officer, Zivrak, snorted derisively. The human survived environment trials through luck. Combat simulation requires actual skill. Jack maintained a neutral expression as the system scanned each candidate, calibrating difficulty parameters. The holographic assignment board activated, displaying combat pairings. A ripple of surprised murmurs spread through the observation deck as the assignments appeared. Jack Foster versus Dorax, Jurgen Elite Guard. The spectators stirred with anticipation. Dorax stood nearly 3 meters tall, his 8-limbed frame genetically enhanced for combat in high-gravity environments. The Jurgen's exoskeleton bore ceremonial markings indicating 17 successful death matches. Against such an opponent, the human appeared absurdly outmatched. Coalition security officers placed substantial wagers on how quickly Jack would fall. The combat simulator activated, creating a neutral battlefield with varied terrain features. Dorax entered first, massive limbs flexing as he selected a traditional Jurgen warhammer from the weapons rack, a brutally efficient instrument designed to shatter exoskeletons and pulverize internal organs with single strikes. Jack entered unarmed, drawing confused murmurs from the audience. He wore only the standard training uniform, having declined even basic armor plating. As the combatants took their positions, Dorax's mandibles clicked in what translated as contemptuous laughter. "You dishonor yourself by entering combat unprepared, human," the Jurgen rumbled. "I will attempt to leave your remains identifiable." The signal chime sounded. Dorax launched forward with surprising speed for his mass, warhammer describing a perfect arc toward Jack's unprotected skull. The human's response confounded observers. Instead of attempting to dodge or block, he stepped into the attack, sliding precisely along the hammer's trajectory while targeting a seemingly innocuous point on the Jurgen's lower left limb. Jack's fingers pressed with calculated precision against a nerve junction the Jurgen didn't even know existed. The massive warrior's leg immediately collapsed, throwing his attack off balance. Before Dorax could recover, Jack executed a flowing sequence of strikes against specific nerve clusters, each movement economical and precise. In the observation deck, Commander Vexhorn leaned forward, scales darkening with confusion. What combat style is this? It targets vulnerabilities our anatomical scans don't even identify. Dr. Neary's feathers rippled with scientific fascination. Earth's historical records mention combat arts developed by physically limited humans against stronger opponents. They mapped pressure points and vulnerabilities through centuries of anatomical study. On the combat floor, Dorax roared in frustration as his limbs refused to respond properly. The Jurgen's genetic enhancements had focused on increasing strength and resilience, improving existing capabilities rather than addressing fundamental weaknesses in their evolutionary design. Jack systematically exploited these oversights, targeting nerve clusters and circulation points with precision born from thousands of years of human martial development. The combat ended with shocking abruptness. Dorax immobilized, but largely uninjured, the warhammer lying useless meters away. The arena fell silent as observers struggled to process what they'd witnessed. The human had defeated a premier combat specialist without landing a single killing blow or suffering any injury. In the control center, Coalition combat instructors reviewed the footage obsessively. He identified anatomical vulnerabilities our medical scans don't even register, noted the chief tactical analyst. The pressure point targeting requires understanding of xenophysiology beyond our database parameters. More concerning, added the neural specialist, the human appears to be improving exponentially, adapting to each new challenge faster than our systems can analyze. His neural plasticity exceeds our predictive models. Jack withdrew from the arena, aware of the scrutinizing gazes following his every movement. The neural combat simulator had recorded everything: his techniques, reaction times, decision-making processes. He had revealed capabilities that Coalition intelligence had never documented in humans, confirming their suspicions that Earth's species possessed undocumented advantages. That evening, Coalition security officers installed additional monitoring equipment in the human quarters. Through apparently sealed bulkheads, Jack observed senior military strategists accessing Earth's historical warfare records with newfound urgency. Ancient texts on Sun Tzu, Miyamoto Musashi, and other human military theorists, previously dismissed as primitive philosophical meanderings, were being translated and analyzed by Coalition tacticians. As Jack prepared for the next day's trials, he reflected on humanity's long history of conflict. Unlike the Coalition species who evolved specialized combat capabilities, humans had developed warfare as an art form, studying weaknesses and creating countless methods to overcome superior opponents. The ability to identify vulnerabilities, adapt strategies, and exploit psychological factors had kept humanity alive through millennia of conflict against stronger predators and later against themselves. Tomorrow would bring even greater challenges and reveal more of humanity's unexpected capabilities. Red emergency lighting bathed the Gauntlet facility as klaxons shattered the pre-dawn silence. Jack bolted upright in his quarters, instantly alert despite having been in deep sleep moments before. The Station A's voice echoed through every compartment, its usual measured tones replaced with urgent harmonic patterns. Alert status Alpha. Unknown vessels breached perimeter defenses. All security personnel implement emergency protocols. This is not a simulation. Jack moved with practiced efficiency, securing basic equipment while monitoring the tactical feeds now streaming across his quarters display. Multiple unidentified craft had penetrated Kelbrax's orbital defense grid using previously unknown stealth technology. Their configuration matched no Coalition records but aligned with fragmented intelligence on Tarax assault vessels. The corridor outside his quarters erupted with activity as surviving Gauntlet participants rushed to defensive positions. Emergency bulkheads slammed into place, compartmentalizing the station to contain potential breaches. Through the reinforced viewport at the corridor's end, Jack witnessed the distinctive purple-white flare of Tarax plasma weaponry striking the facility's outer hull. Commander Vexhorn's voice crackled through the emergency channel. All Gauntlet personnel to emergency rally point Epsilon. Hostiles have breached decks 3 through 7. Implement Tactical Protocol 17. Jack joined the stream of defenders converging on the central command hub. The remaining alien candidates moved with specialized combat efficiency. Drakari scales hardening into battle configuration, Vexari neural enhancements engaging to accelerate reaction times, Jurgen exoskeletons flexing as combat hormones flooded their systems. Tactical Officer Telex intercepted Jack before he reached the command center. The metallic being's surface rippled with urgent patterns. The Terrax breached our quantum communications array first, Telex reported, voice pitched low. No distress signal transmitted. Reinforcements won't know we're under attack for at least 12 standard cycles. They knew exactly where to hit us, Jack observed, analyzing the attack pattern displayed on nearby tactical screens. This isn't random. They targeted the gauntlet specifically. Agreed, Telex confirmed. And they've deployed something new, atmospheric dispersal devices on decks 4 through 6. Preliminary analysis suggests neurochemical agents. Before Jack could respond, the emergency medical channel activated. Dr. Neary's voice carried unmistakable distress. Command, medical alert, unknown compound dispersing through ventilation systems. Effects include rapid neural disruption, cognitive impairment, and motor function failure in all tested species. Casualties mounting. No effective countermeasures identified. The command center doors parted to reveal chaos. Coalition officers collapsed at their stations, bodies convulsing as neural systems failed. Commander Vexhorn remained upright through sheer will, scales darkened to near black as his system fought the neurotoxin. The compound targets specific neural pathways the commander managed, voice degrading as his speech centers began failing. Common to most Alliance species. Jack felt no symptoms, his human neurochemistry apparently incompatible with the Tarax weapon. Around him, even the most combat-hardened coalition warriors succumbed one by one, their specialized nervous systems proving universally vulnerable to the precisely engineered toxin. Telex status. Jack asked, turning to find the tactical officer's metallic form already displaying distress patterns, surface rippling uncontrollably. Neural interface. Compromised. Telex struggled to communicate. Autonomic systems failing. You must implement Protocol Omega. Authorization. Code. The metallic being convulsed violently before collapsing, surface hardening into static patterns. Jack found himself alone among unconscious or incapacitated alien allies. Through the command center viewport, he observed Terrax boarding crafts attaching to multiple access points. Their distinctive biomechanical designs, part machine, part engineered organism, extended penetration appendages that bypassed coalition security measures with disturbing efficiency. Tactical displays showed 3 gauntlet decks already fallen to the invaders. The station's automated defenses had been systematically disabled through methods that suggested intimate knowledge of coalition security protocols. The remaining defensive systems would fail within minutes, leaving the entire facility vulnerable. Jack accessed the emergency protocols through Commander Vexhorn's still-active authentication. Protocol Omega appeared prominently, the last resort defensive measure requiring dual-species authorization. With Telex incapacitated before providing the necessary code, Jack couldn't implement it properly. The human faced a critical decision. Coalition protocol demanded he protect himself and the unconscious personnel in the command center, awaiting reinforcements that might never arrive. Strategic assessment indicated a 97% probability of facility capture within the hour. Instead, Jack accessed the station's engineering subsystems, rapidly improvising alternatives using his knowledge of coalition technology combined with unconventional human approaches. Within minutes, he had reconfigured emergency equipment into makeshift weapons using principles that predated Earth's space age. Securing the command center entrance with repurposed gravitational stabilizers, Jack retrieved a neural stimulant from the medical supplies. The Coalition-designed compound would keep Commander Vexhorn conscious long enough to provide critical intelligence, though a potential cost to the Drakkari's long-term neural function. As the commander regained partial awareness, security cameras captured footage of Jack's methodical preparations. The human moved with focused efficiency, implementing improvised defenses that followed no coalition tactical doctrine. His approach incorporated environmental factors coalition species typically ignored, created psychological deterrence against the hive-minded Turax, and established fallback positions that maximized human mobility advantages. In the orbital monitoring station, now the only functioning coalition facility in the system, senior analysts watched with growing astonishment as a single human organized an effective resistance against overwhelming odds. Most shocking to observers, despite sleep deprivation, inadequate nutrition, and mounting injuries, Jack demonstrated no degradation in cognitive function or tactical decision-making. Where specialized combat species would require rest cycles and metabolic replenishment, the human continued functioning at peak efficiency through biological mechanisms the coalition had never fully documented. As Turax forces breached the adjacent section, Jack prepared to defend his position using methods drawn from humanity's long, brutal history of warfare. Techniques developed by beings who lacked natural weapons but had mastered the art of survival against superior predators. The real battle was about to begin. Station Commander Shardmind watched tactical displays in stunned silence from the emergency bunker beneath Nexus Station. The quantum relay, hastily repaired by engineering staff, provided fragmented visuals from Kelbraxis. What the crystalline officer witnessed defied coalition combat doctrine and tactical projections. A single human systematically disrupted the Turax invasion. Magnify Sector 14, Shardmind ordered, voice resonating through his crystalline form. The display shifted, showing Jack moving through maintenance corridors with precise efficiency. The human had somehow accessed environmental control systems, manipulating atmosphere, gravity, and power distribution in ways the hyperlogical Turax never anticipated. How is he bypassing security lockouts? Demanded the coalition tactical officer. Those systems require species-specific authorization. The engineering chief's mandibles clicked nervously. He's not accessing them conventionally. He's reconfiguring hardware connections physically. Our security protocols guard against digital intrusion, but assume physical access points are already secured. On screen, Jack systematically modified life support controls in captured sections. Turax boarding parties suddenly found themselves in corridors where gravity shifted unpredictably or atmospheric pressure fluctuated beyond their tolerance ranges. When Jack intentionally caused a containment breach in an abandoned sector, using decompression to separate Turax forces, coalition tacticians recognized a strategy from Earth's ancient naval warfare. That's a maneuver from something called the Battle of Midway, noted the intelligence officer, cross-referencing historical databases. Human naval combat from their pre-space era. The tactic shouldn't work in this context, yet. The display showed Turax forces retreating from the compromised sector, their normally perfect coordination showing signs of confusion. The hive-minded invaders, encountering human unpredictability for the first time, began displaying hesitation in their movements. Meanwhile, Jack located a group of coalition specialists trapped in the medical bay. 3 Vexari scientists and a wounded Drakkari security officer had barricaded themselves inside, but Turax-cutting tools were already penetrating the reinforced doors. "They're finished," muttered the tactical officer. "That door will breach in minutes, and they have no weapons." Yet instead of attempting rescue, Jack accessed an adjacent laboratory. The human moved through the specialized equipment with surprising familiarity, rapidly repurposing medical scanners and cellular regeneration devices. When he emerged, he carried improvised weapons that bore no resemblance to their original medical function. The coalition observers watched in astonishment as Jack organized the trapped specialists into an effective resistance force. The human demonstrated leadership qualities previously dismissed as emotional weakness, using encouragement and psychological insight to motivate terrified technical personnel. The Tarax are hive-minded, Jack explained to the specialists, his voice captured by partially functioning communication systems. They operate on consensus-based decision trees optimized for known variables. We need to present problems their shared consciousness can't easily categorize. Under Jack's direction, the Coalition specialists reconfigured the medical base equipment into an integrated defense system. Regeneration fields became disruptive barriers. Diagnostic scanners transformed into targeted electromagnetic pulse generators. Cellular synthesis chambers were modified to produce compounds that interfered with the Tarax's sensory apparatus. "That's impossible," whispered the Coalition biotech specialist observing from Nexus Station. "He's applying principles from Earth's Industrial Revolution to manipulate our advanced technology in ways we never conceived." When the Tarax finally breached the medical bay's outer doors, they encountered defenses entirely outside their tactical experience. Their first wave retreated in disarray, biological components overwhelmed by stimuli their shared consciousness couldn't interpret. Intercepted Tarax communications revealed a new protocol: avoid direct engagement with the human at all costs. The invaders began withdrawing from specific sections, abandoning captured territory rather than confronting Jack's unpredictable countermeasures. "They're afraid of him," realized Commander Shardmund. Crystalline features refracting light in patterns indicating deep concern. Not of his weapons or physical capabilities, but of his cognitive approach. Coalition reinforcements, finally alerted to the attack, arrived to find Jack leading a counteroffensive using tactics drawn from Earth's ancient military history. Concepts so archaic that Tarax's predictive systems never considered them possible. The human had organized surviving Coalition personnel into functional units regardless of species, assigning roles based on adaptability rather than specialized function. "He's implementing something called asymmetric warfare," reported the intelligence officer, reviewing historical databases with new respect. Humans developed these approaches during millennia of conflict against technologically superior opponents and stronger predator species. Most remarkable to Coalition observers, Jack had maintained operational effectiveness despite injuries that would incapacitate specialized combat species. Medical telemetry showed fractured bones, internal bleeding, and severe exhaustion. Yet the human's decision-making remained clear, his movements purposeful, if increasingly labored. "Their pain response differs fundamentally from ours," Dr. Neary observed from the medical station, having recovered sufficiently to monitor telemetry. "Where our species evolved specialized pain avoidance mechanisms, humans developed the ability to function despite pain, to compartmentalize it while maintaining critical functions." As Coalition reinforcements secured the facility section by section, they discovered Tarax forces had altered their entire tactical approach. The invaders avoided areas where sensors detected human life signs, abandoning valuable equipment and strategic positions rather than risking contact. Jack coordinated with Coalition Command from a makeshift operations center he'd established in the station's core. His appearance shocked the relief personnel. Bloodied, exhausted, yet focused with unnerving intensity. Around him, Coalition specialists from various species worked together using hybrid systems that combined advanced technology with improvised solutions. "The Tarax aren't retreating from superior firepower," Jack explained to the Coalition commander, pointing to tactical displays showing enemy movements. "They're retreating from uncertainty. Their hive mind can't process our unpredictability." The humans' understanding of infrastructure systems, tactical adaptability, and psychological warfare had transformed what should have been a devastating defeat into a strategic victory. And as the last Tarax vessels fled the system, Coalition intelligence intercepted communications that would forever change how they view their human allies. The Tarax weren't just retreating, they were terrified. The Coalition War Council convened in Nexus Station's Grand Chamber, an unprecedented gathering of military leaders, scientific authorities, and diplomatic representatives from 17 species. Holographic displays surrounded the central platform where Jack stood at parade rest, his posture formal despite the healing injuries still evident beneath his new uniform. The standard coalition attire had been modified to accommodate human physiological requirements, a small but significant acknowledgement of change. Commander Vexorn, now missing his right secondary arm from the battle, approached the platform. The Drakkari's scales had healed to a distinctive pale shade that would forever mark his survival of neurotoxin exposure. When he spoke, the usual undercurrent of disdain was notably absent. The Coalition Intelligence Directorate has completed analysis of the Kelbraxis incident, Vexorn announced, voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Our conclusions necessitate immediate strategic reconsideration of our relationship with humanity. Murmurs rippled through the assembled dignitaries as the commander activated the primary display. Tactical reconstructions of Jack's defense played alongside thorax communication intercepts, biometric analyses, and comparative combat assessments. We misunderstood your species entirely, Vexorn continued, looking directly at Jack. What we perceived as evolutionary disadvantages are actually sophisticated survival mechanisms developed through millennia of adaptation. The scientific attaché, a chlorin biologist, extended frond-like appendages toward data displays. Human adaptability exceeds anything in our evolutionary index. Where our species developed specialized traits for specific environmental niches, humans maintained generalized systems capable of unprecedented modification. Dr. Neri stepped forward, her avian features arranged in formal scientific presentation posture. Neurological assessment reveals humans possess cognitive flexibility that our predictive models failed to anticipate. Their problem-solving approaches incorporate variables our specialized thinking patterns systematically overlook. The most startling evidence came from the Intelligence Directorate. Decrypted Terax communications revealed the invaders' collective consciousness had encountered human thought patterns during early covert observation missions to Earth. The experience had deeply unsettled the hive mind, introducing concept structures it couldn't properly categorize. To perfectly logical, predictable species like the Thorax, explained the intelligence director, humanity's chaotic creativity and adaptability represented something incomprehensible and terrifying, a cognitive threat unlike any they previously encountered. High Admiral Jovac, the Coalition's supreme military commander, addressed the assembly with formal gravity. Based on comprehensive assessment, the Coalition Security Council has voted unanimously to reclassify humans from Category 7, Protected Species, to Category 1, Strategic Asset. The chamber erupted with discussion. Such a reclassification represented the most dramatic status change in Coalition history. Many species had spent centuries advancing incrementally through the classification system. Humanity had leaped 6 categories based on a single individual's performance. Jack maintained his composure, though the significance wasn't lost on him. Category 1 designation granted Earth full protection under Coalition security treaties, access to advanced technology transfers, and equal standing in military planning, all things previously withheld from developing species. Lieutenant Foster, Admiral Jovac continued once the chamber quieted. The Council has approved creation of a new division within Coalition security. You will serve as head instructor for the Human Combat Methodology Integration Program, tasked with incorporating your species' unique approaches into our defensive doctrine. The formal ceremony concluded with the presentation of the Coalition's highest military honor, the Stellar Valorous Service Medallion, only the 3rd time it had been awarded to a non-founding species. As dignitaries filed out to begin implementation of the new protocols, Telex approached Jack. The tactical officer's metallic surface had been restored after significant medical intervention. "There is something you should see," Telex said quietly, leaving Jack to a private observation deck overlooking the station's docking bays. Below, a delegation of ranking Vexery diplomats greeted the first official Earth diplomatic contingent. The humans, a diverse group representing various Earth nations, were being received with formal honors previously reserved for founding coalition members. Diplomatic channels reopened immediately after the Kelbraxis report reached Coalition's Central Command, Telex explained. The Tyrax incursions have accelerated dramatically in sectors where human forces are absent. We believe they're systematically avoiding confrontation with your species while expanding elsewhere. They fear what they don't understand, Jack observed, and humans are fundamentally unpredictable to hive mind strategic thinking. Precisely why the Coalition needs your perspective, confirmed Commander Vexhorn, joining them at the viewport. Our specialized evolution made us vulnerable to enemies who could identify and exploit our predictable responses. Humanity's chaotic adaptability represents something none of us possess. Through the viewport, Jack watched as coalition ships prepared for departure to Earth, not as superiors offering protection to a developing world, but as equals seeking alliance against the Tyrax threat, approaching humanity with newfound respect for the very traits they had once dismissed as primitive limitations. In the Intelligence Center, several decks below, analysts continued studying the Tyrax retreat pattern with growing fascination. The Invaders' usual methodical expansion had been replaced by erratic course corrections and abandoned strategic positions, all to create maximum distance from Earth-controlled sectors. The final decoded Tyrax transmission, now displayed prominently in the Coalition War Room, contained just 5 words that transformed the galactic security landscape: avoid human contact at all costs. A species the Coalition had reluctantly admitted as provisional members now represented their greatest strategic advantage. The remaining Gauntlet candidates, still recovering from neurotoxin exposure, had already requested human combat instructors for their elite units. Weapon designers studied Earth's military history for inspiration. Tactical planners incorporated human unpredictability into battle algorithms. As Jack prepared for his first briefing as combat methodology instructor, he reflected on humanity's long journey. From struggling against predators on the African savanna to defending coalition space against advanced alien threats, one trait had ensured their survival: the ability to adapt, to overcome, to transform disadvantage into strength. The aliens had thought the human was powerless until combat training started. Now they understood that was when humanity was most dangerous.